Coming up on Market to Market, Secretary of Agriculture Tom Vilsack announces new funding to fight a lethal swine disease. The Obama administration calls for sweeping cuts in emissions from coal-fired power plants. And an innovative program in the Show Me state pays off in spades for cattle producers. Those stories and market analysis with John Roach, next.
Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com. This is the Friday, June 6th edition of Market to Market, the weekly journal of rural America.
Hello, I'm Mike Pearson. Equity traders ventured into record territory on Wall Street yet again late this week as the Dow flirted with 17,000 on news of continued improvement in the U.S. labor market. The government reported Friday that U.S. employers added 217,000 workers in May, marking the fourth straight month of significant hiring gains. The unemployment rate held steady at 6.3%, but that's still the lowest level in more than 5 years. Meanwhile, U.S. auto sales rose in May to a 9-year high of just over 1.6 million. All told, motorists purchased 15.6 million cars last year, up 50% from the depths of the recession in 2009. And officials reported this week that the U.S. trade deficit jumped to a 2-year high in April on surging imports. Last year, America's cavernous trade gap narrowed by more than 11%, thanks largely to a boom in domestic energy production. This week, however, the Obama administration sent shockwaves through the energy sector when the EPA unveiled plans to drastically reduce carbon dioxide emissions from American power plants.
The new guidelines released this week by the Environmental Protection Agency call for a 30% reduction in coal-fired power plant emissions by 2030. Existing power plants are the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the U.S. And the White House, along with several environmental groups, claim that without bold action, climate change, attributed to high levels of atmospheric carbon, will intensify.
This is not just about disappearing polar bears and melting ice caps, although I like polar bears and I know about melting ice caps. This is about protecting our health, and it is about protecting our homes.
Unlike new power plants, the government cannot directly restrict emissions from existing plants, but it can issue clean air guidelines, forcing individual states to formulate their own rules to comply with the directives. Some coal-producing states find themselves in a dubious position, phasing out a commodity which has been the linchpin of their economies for generations. Several frustrated state officials offered their opinion of the decree early this week.
Unfortunately, the proposal unveiled today falls far short of the balance that must exist if we are to continue to grow and prosper.
The coal industry joined state lawmakers, calling for caution as the administration proceeds with what would amount to one of the most significant U.S. actions on global warming.
If this rule goes into effect within a 5-year period after it goes into effect, in many states you'll have a double-digit increase in electricity prices. That's because you're going to have fewer power plants in play and you're going to have more volatility in other sources of energy.
Porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, or PED, is having a significant impact on the U.S. pork industry. According to the Agriculture Department, PED is common in Asia, and the virus does not pose a threat to human health. Nevertheless, PED has killed 7 million U.S. piglets over the past year, and the number of market-ready hogs could decline by more than 10% this summer. At the world's largest pork-specific trade show this week, USDA announced updated reporting protocols and earmarked millions of dollars in new funding to fight the disease.
Hog producers, dealing with both great market prices and a disease with no known cure, took center stage at the Iowa State Fairgrounds this week for the World Pork Expo. The annual celebration of food, policy, and product attracts visitors from around the world to the state that's the largest producer of pork in the world.
We're looking at an increase of somewhere between 150 and 200 operations a week. So this is obviously an expanding issue.
Nearly every conversation, though, came back to a lethal disease besieging the industry, the porcine epidemic diarrhea virus, or PED. Late this week, USDA Chief Tom Vilsack announced $26 million in funding to help combat the diseases of PEDV and Delta coronavirus.
We recognize that it is important to focus on creating a better understanding of these viruses, a better understanding of how they came into this country, a better understanding of how to deal with them once they are here, and how ultimately to deal with the eradication and elimination of them.
Pork producers say it's an interesting time for the industry as record high prices offer some consolation for the losses to PED.
For some people, it's been a positive impact in terms of price because the supply has diminished. For those producers that had no pigs contracted and didn't get hit with PED, they're doing very well.
The export market has been especially good for U.S. pork producers. Normally, the old saying goes, the cure for high prices is high prices, but a noted economist says that may not be the case this time.
This one's a little different, and it's a supply shock, a productivity shock, and at some point we have to make a decision. Are we going to be able to solve the productivity problem, or do we have to overcome it with more production capacity?
While the outlook for favorable prices is good for pork producers, it may be even brighter over the longer term in the beef sector. America's farmers and ranchers are already enjoying record or near record prices for their cattle, due largely to a drought-reduced herd. But that can be a double-edged sword. Cattlemen are paying premium prices for some decidedly not premium replacement stock. But producers in the Show Me state are trying to change that. So far, more than 100,000 Missouri heifers have been enrolled in an innovative program designed to improve breeding characteristics. Paul Yeager explains.
America's cattle herd is smaller than it has been in 63 years, but the number of young females being kept for breeding is on the rise. The Agriculture Department reports the nation's farmers and ranchers kept nearly 5.5 million beef heifers for breeding this year, up nearly 100,000 from last year. And in anticipation of rebounding cattle numbers, a handful of states have added or are planning heifer improvement programs, such as one began 17 years ago in Missouri.
You know, we're at a very fortunate time relative to having the program in place, given where the cattle industry's at and the demand for heifers, because there's going to be significant demand for good quality replacement heifers.
In the early 1990s, Patterson established a single county program in Kentucky where cattle producers were worried about low pregnancy rates and calving difficulty among their heifers.
You know, now it would seem to be a fairly simplistic set of requirements that more or less encompassed everything from the time a heifer was weaned from her mother on up through her first breeding season and then subsequently.
Patterson believed the University of Missouri Extension's statewide network of livestock specialists would make a larger scale effort possible. So a few years later, he brought the concept with him to the #2 beef cattle producing state, setting up the Missouri Show Me Select Replacement Heifer Program.
We eliminate heifers right up front that aren't going to succeed. Some of the top cattle economists will tell you it takes us 5 or 6 years to pay for a heifer.
Heifers remaining in the program are eligible to be sold at Show Me Select auctions. In November and December of 2013, bred heifers in those sales sold for an average of more than $2,100. Heifers in Oklahoma City, the location the federal government uses to track breeding stock sale prices, brought an average of $1,287 or $900 less. University of Missouri ag economist Scott Brown says the comparison isn't perfect because the federal government doesn't track prices for breeding stock as closely as those of market steers and heifers. But he believes the data from multiple years does point to some added value. Also, comparing Show Me Select heifers with those not in the program reveals how artificial insemination, or AI, and better genetics can increase average sale prices anywhere from 7 to 22%.
In the beef industry, we're looking at about 10% or less of the cattle in the beef industry are artificially inseminated every year, which is extremely low compared to other nations, and even other sectors within the U.S. The dairy industry is almost strictly AI, and we've still been slow to implement it in the beef industry.
Many of the enrolled Missouri farms, 115 as of fall of 2013, kept Show Me heifers for their own herds. That's the case at Crooks Farms near Leeton, Missouri, where 3 families are involved in the cattle business.
You know, we started out with this program just to make a little extra money on as far as selling bred heifers, but it's turned our whole cow herd around because, you know, through AI and being able to get better genetics.
The program's heifers must have pelvic bones of a certain width and height, a mature reproductive system, and have received certain vaccinations. At Crooks Farms, this year's 125 heifers were run through a chute for the usual vaccinations, as well as a pre-breeding exam. The cattle are run through at least 4 more times for placing and later removing implants that regulate progesterone levels, optional artificial insemination, and 1 or 2 pregnancy checks.
It works for some producers, it doesn't work for other producers because it's a lot of extra work, but then when they go to sell them, they get a lot more value added there.
The program prompts cattle producers to add practices they might not have otherwise. At Crooks Farms, they not only added artificial insemination to give themselves more options for sires, but also began implanting the progesterone devices known as CIDRs, or controlled internal drug release inserts, to synchronize their heifers' reproductive cycles. As a result, most heifers will be fertile around the same time, and as a group, they calve within a narrower time span.
When they was bull bred, we was up 45, 60 days at 2 o'clock every night. Somebody was checking the heifers. Now we've got them grouped to where that's a 10, 12, 14-day period, and then we kind of got a slack time.
Howard Early is quick to point out, however, that the program doesn't magically turn calving season into a day at the spa. Heifers sometimes still end up not getting pregnant when they should, and calves sometimes die at birth.
That's been one of the problems that the perception of some of the public has. It's supposed to take every fault out of it, and there's still going to be some issues.
Statistics suggest those heifers in the program are less likely to need assistance calving.
If we look at national data, typically first calf heifers have an assistance rates of 25 to 30%. In our Show Me Select program, we have that pulled that down into that 8, 9, 10% of assistance rates.
Hiring a veterinarian or AI technician to work on the heifers, as well as the per-animal fees, can create new expenses, but beef experts not involved in the program understand why it could lead to a financial gain.
Really got to try to ensure a higher pregnancy rate in those females, and I think they've looked to Missouri and noted that they're implementing the kind of management practices that we need.
Less than 2 years ago, Missouri's Show Me Select spun off a related program, Quality Beef by the Numbers, to track how steers born from the program's females are doing when it comes to meat quality.
We want to trace those animals from conception to carcass.
For Market to Market, I'm Paul Yeager.
Next, the Market to Market report.
Severe thunderstorms rolled through the heart of the Corn Belt on several occasions this week, especially Tuesday, when Mother Nature pelted Nebraska with baseball-sized hail, torrential rains, and even a dust storm. Nevertheless, grain prices declined. For the week, July wheat lost 9 cents, while the nearby corn contract moved 7 cents lower. Old crop soybeans fell out of bed Thursday, and the July contract settled with a weekly loss of 36 cents. Nearby meal prices followed suit, giving up $12.60 per ton. In the softs, cotton also was pressured this week as the July contract lost nearly $1.50 per hundredweight. In the dairy market, June Class 3 milk gained 38 cents, while the deferred contract lost 27. It was another record-breaking week in livestock, where the August cattle contract gained $2.70. August feeders settled above $200 Friday with a weekly gain of nearly $3.50, and the July lean hog contract bounced back from last week's decline with a weekly gain of $4.50. In the financials, the euro was virtually unchanged against the dollar. Crude oil lost a nickel per barrel. COMEX gold advanced by $6.50 per ounce, and the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index lost nearly 2 points to settle at 647.80. Here now to lend us his insight on these and other trends is our senior market analyst, John Roach. John, welcome back.
Thanks, Mike.
It was an interesting week on the grain side. We had severe weather across most of the heartland. We had rains coming down, most of the corn's in. Let's talk about the wheat market. To begin, we saw it continue to slide. Where are we headed here in this next week?
Wheat market slid a long ways over the past 30 days. When the rains finally started to come, they stabilized the hard red winter crop, although some of it's not going to be worth combining at all, and continued to develop the soft red crop nicely and get spring wheat crop planted. So we really made some improvements as far as the conditions are concerned, and the speculative buying that had been in the market started to leave and prices started to decline. Our cash bids are much above world price levels, so we lost some export business. And maybe the last thing is that we're finally seeing the grain situation in Ukraine and Russia seem relatively normal in view of the uncertainty in that situation. Having normal business occur was a real negative to the wheat market.
Now, you mentioned America's cash grain wheat businesses, bids are higher than most other countries. Is that indicative of us being able to use the U.S. grain crop in country, or are we going to be kind of sitting on it a while?
We're going to be sitting on it. Wheat is a big export crop, and we've got the competition from the Black Sea region where they've got improving crops. The ratings are all improving a little bit. We're moving into harvest, and so from a standpoint of competitive situation, they're likely to undersell us as long as they have inventory and the capability to ship it.
And the bottom line for producers out there, this lull in the market, probably not a great selling opportunity. Do you hold off, wait for some weather scares?
Well, we have a weather scare. That's the decline has been a longer-term decline over a period of several weeks. And now on Friday, wheat was the leader back to the upside, putting in a real strong performance as people look at the weather situation immediate and directly ahead of us. It looks like it's going to cause us some problems in getting the wheat harvest going in this country. So we're back into the weather market again. Farmers prayed for rain for a long time, and finally when they got it, it's coming at the wrong time and doing a lot of damage.
So good time to be making some sales, or do you hold off and see where this leads us?
I think you have to wait a little bit. We have buy signals actually on the technical indicators we follow, and we think the market can bounce back somewhat, but we're really not optimistic about a big move in the market. We just want to give it a little opportunity. We think that this selling that we've gone through has kind of been exhausted, and we think that the market can stage some recovery, so we'd have a little bit of patience right at the moment.
All right. Well, now let's talk corn a little bit. Corn market sliding on the old crop side a little bit, up slightly on new crop corn. Where is this market headed into this next week?
Again, the corn market has come under the same kind of pressure that the wheat market's come under. Same kind of reasons, speculative sales, liquidation. A pretty good movement of wheat on the part of farmers back a few weeks ago. They got the buyers kind of taken care of, and then improving weather, the crop got planted, and we're off to the best rated crop in quite a while. So we really have about all the negative things that you can bring to bear on corn. We also have buy signals in corn. We accumulated some feed over the last, actually over the last couple weeks, we've been picking off some feed purchases. We think at the moment in the corn market, that's probably the person that ought to be most active is a person needing feed for the summer. We think farmers are going to be really tough and not willing to sell corn, and expect prices to firm a little bit, particularly in the cash. We are concerned about new crop prospects, and we'll be looking for sales opportunities, but right at the moment, we're just really kind of cautious here, thinking we'll have better opportunities than what we have today.
All right, now you mentioned the new crop prospects, and we've got a question from one of our Twitter followers, Tim in Crookston, Minnesota, and he's curious, how many acres do you think are going to be prevented plant in northern Minnesota, North Dakota, those northern areas that were really cold really late?
We've seen some estimates that there's maybe as many as 4 million acres that are yet to be planted, and we're getting late into the planting season. So it's certainly possible that some of those acres will go prevent plant or get switched over to a different crop. So it's still an uncertain question, but one that's going to be getting answered by the end of the month when we see the June USDA planting intentions or planting report, the end of June planting report. We think it'll be a little less than the 91.7 the government had in their March report. We think it could be 1 to maybe 2 million acres less than what they intended to plant in March.
Now, in those 1 to 2 million acres, as we change gears to take a look at soybeans, and we talk prevent plant, acres shifting, are we going to see some of them shift into the soybean column, do you think?
We think so. We think that the bean market, with the strength that we've seen during the planting season here, we're going to get a few more acres of beans, a few less acres of corn, and it's concerning to us on soybeans, actually.
It's concerning, and as we watched this week, the market took a big slide there on Thursday, trended down through the week. Where do you see this going?
We think the soybean market is being held up by the extreme tight supplies of old crop inventory in this country. The U.S. stocks are going to be the tightest in many years before we combine that first field of soybeans this fall. So we're going to have to ration that out with price. That's what we've been doing. We've had very high prices on beans, and we've had the market come apart a little bit here the latter part of the week, and so maybe we've reached price levels that are high enough. We certainly could import, and we need to import more beans from Brazil in order to satisfy the kind of demand we think we have between now and the end of the crop year. But at the moment, the numbers aren't quite right. We're just not moving that many beans in from Brazil. So old crop beans are one animal. New crop beans are a different one. The new crop beans are going to be very much supplied this year. The acreage is large. Yield forecasts look excellent. Government's using a very strong yield. We expect the South Americans to plant a big crop this next fall. They just harvested a big crop. We think the beans are going to go from a tight supply situation now to a very oversupplied situation next winter. So we're most concerned about getting sales made in the new crop bean market on any kind of moves back to the upside. We think that's what farmers need to focus on.
All right. Well, now let's take a look at the livestock market. Big moves there across the board as we take a look at the fat cattle market where it stands today. We're in record territory. Is this sustainable, to use a word that's in fashion today?
Well, record prices are never sustainable, but they may go to bigger records before they become unable to hold.
Where do you see us headed of those two choices?
I think at the moment the market is very strong, and most everybody understands the reason behind it. Our herd is small, and then the problems we have with virus in the pork complex, and so we have tight supplies with an economy that's improving in this country and around the world. So our exports are good, our domestic demand is good, and we're actually driving prices maybe a little higher than we should if you just look at the number counts because of the strong demand. So everything is about as positive as you can make it. That is normally a good time to make sales. We have sell signals on corn, on cattle, we have sell signals on hogs, and we think this is a spot here in this time frame when a person normally needs to put on hedges and protect out into the future. So we're suggesting livestock producers be cautious here from a standpoint of the market price, take a look for profit opportunities where they can be satisfied, and look to hedge some of those cattle and hogs off.
All right, and now as we take a look to feeder prices, to dig in a little bit deeper, as we did set a record, went north of $200 a hundredweight in feeder cattle this week. For folks with maybe some spring calves that will be marketing in the fall, what is going to be the best way to make those sales if you're leery of perhaps an outright future sale?
I think not to worry. I think that the feeder cattle market is going to stay strong really off into the future. And I'm much less worried about the feeder cattle market as we look out forward. I just think the supplies are going to be tight. We're going to be pulling more heifer calves back into the herd. And so I just think it's going to be a positive kind of a market, and I'm not sure I'd be anxious to be into a hedging program on feeders. We're getting the green lights on. I mean, we have all the ingredients here to say, you know, these are prices that could top out a market, but there's really no signal that that's happening, and the supplies are just tight enough, I think, as we move through this year that we're going to, for most people that are going to be producing feeder cattle, it's just going to be a good year for you.
All right, now let's take a look at hog prices. We've seen the World Pork Expo going on, a lot of PED discussion, and we saw the market rally a little bit this week on hogs. Where are we coming around to? Are we hitting kind of an equilibrium here in the low 120s?
Well, price-wise, we've really pushed beyond where the fundamentals, some of the way people look at fundamentals would indicate that we're actually producing more pork at a higher price level and allowing packers a large margin at the same time. So it doesn't really make sense if the pork is in such tight supply. How is it the packers can make good margins? So there's still probably some more money that they can put into their bids if they choose to do that. And it's really all because the demand side of this equation is better at these price levels than we thought it could be.
Wow. It's an interesting time to be a livestock producer in America today.
Well, it's a very interesting time, and at the same token, we have a lot of producers out there that are having a very difficult time because they have the virus in their herd, and they've had it, and they don't know yet what the cause is, and they don't know if they'll get it again, and so it's a disappointing time for others as well.
You bet. Thanks for being with us, John, this week.
Thank you very much, Mike.
That wraps up this edition of Market to Market. But John and I will continue our discussion and answer some of your questions in our Market Plus segment online. You'll also find audio podcasts and streaming video of our program, as well as links to our Twitter feed, Facebook page, and the rest of our social media outlets exclusively at the Market to Market website. And be sure to join us next week when we'll examine efforts to preserve the history of the American farm. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Mike Pearson. Have a great week.
Market to Market is a production of Iowa Public Television, which is solely responsible for its content. Funding for Market to Market is provided by Grinnell Mutual. You think differently about a customer when you stand in the middle of his dreams. We work to make sure you get covered right. Grinnell Mutual, a policy of working together. Information on finding an agent near you is available at grinnellmutual.com.